In the days that followed, I tried to behave as if nothing had changed. I woke up early as I always did, made my bed neatly, and folded my shawl over the chair. I still walked to the kitchen out of habit. My hands naturally reached for the kettle, the way they had every morning for years. But as soon as I stepped inside, I would see my daughter-in-law already preparing breakfast, moving confidently around the counters that once felt like my own territory. She would turn her head slightly, give me a small polite smile, and say, "Ami, I already made tea for you. It's on the table." And every time, her voice was calm, respectful, but firm enough to remind me that my routine had already been replaced. I told myself not to take it personally. She was managing her home, caring for her children, and handling her responsibilities the way any wife and mother would. There was nothing wrong with that. If anything, I admired her for how smoothly she ran the household. She kept everything clean, organized, and predictable. She was a good homemaker. But somewhere inside me, a quiet ache grew each morning. An ache that came not from what she said, but from what I was no longer allowed to do. It is strange how simple daily tasks, like boiling tea or packing lunch, can hold so much emotional weight. When those tasks are taken away, it sometimes feels like pieces of your identity are being gently moved out of reach. One evening, I overheard her telling my son, "I want to do things my own way now. I appreciate Ami, truly, but I need space." Her voice wasn't angry. It was thoughtful, almost hesitant, as if she didn't want to hurt anyone. My son replied softly, "I understand. She tries her best. She just wants to help." "I know," she said, "but sometimes her help makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. I feel watched, even though she doesn't mean it." I stood behind the half-closed door, listening, not intentionally. I had come out of my room to get my glasses from the living room, but their voices drifted toward me before I reached there. Once I heard the first sentence, I froze. Something inside me wanted to walk away, but my feet wouldn't move. I just stood still, holding my shawl around me, listening to the feeling she had never shared with me directly. She felt watched. She felt pressured. She felt overshadowed by my presence. I didn't know that. Or maybe I had known a little but had chosen not to see it. I felt my throat tighten, but I stayed silent. My son sighed. "I don't want her feelings to get hurt. She depends on us now." "Yes," my daughter-in-law said softly, "and I respect her, but we need to find a balance." Balance. That word echoed in my mind long after they went silent. What was the balance between being a mother and becoming an extra person in your child's home? What was the balance between helping and interfering? Between being present and being too present? That night, I went to my room without saying anything. I closed the door gently so no one could hear the sound of it. I sat on my bed and looked at my hands. Hands that cooked, cleaned, held my son when he was small, wiped his tears when he cried, packed his tiffin, ironed his shirts, and prayed for him every day. I thought about how life changes, how sons grow into men, how their priorities shift, how their love gets shared in new ways. It is not wrong. It is natural. But natural things can still hurt. The next morning, I decided to change my routine. I stayed in my room a little longer. I waited until I heard the children leaving for school before stepping out. I made myself tea quietly, without touching anything that might interrupt her rhythm. When my daughter-in-law saw me making tea later in the day, she said softly, "Ami, you don't have to do that." I smiled and said, "I'm only making tea for myself. Nothing else." She nodded, relieved. There was no conflict in our home. No raised voices. No arguments. We just had different needs. She needed her space, her independence, her sense of control. I needed purpose, belonging, and the comfort of routine. But these needs were slowly drifting apart. A few weeks later, something else changed. One afternoon, I came home from a quick walk to the corner shop. As I entered the living room, I saw my daughter-in-law rearranging the drawers of the cabinet where I kept some of my things. Old photographs, letters from my parents, a few small keepsakes from my childhood home. She looked up when I entered and said, "Ami, I was just trying to make some space." We needed the drawer for the children's school papers. I nodded, but I felt a small sting. That drawer had been mine since the day I moved in. It was where I kept memories. Things I rarely touched but loved knowing were close. She hadn't thrown anything away. She had placed my things in a box on top of the cabinet. Still, seeing my memories move quietly without my knowledge made me feel like a guest again. I said nothing. I simply picked up the box and carried it to my room. She didn't notice the way I held it close, the way a person might hold something fragile. That night, I opened the box and looked through the old photographs. Pictures of my husband, my parents, my younger days when my face was full of hope and my hair was long and black. I touched the edges of the photos gently and whispered to myself, at least these memories still belong to me. Weeks passed with small shifts like this. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just signals, quiet, polite signals, that my presence needed to become lighter. My son was kind, though distant. He didn't notice the small details, or changes the way a mother notices them. Men often don't. He assumed everything was fine because no one complained. He came home tired, greeted me with love, kissed his children, spoke to his wife, ate dinner, and went to bed. His life was full. He didn't realize mine was getting emptier. Still, I cannot blame him. Life pushes men into circles of responsibility that consume their attention. But mothers live inside the small emotional spaces between those responsibilities. Then came the moment that finally made everything clear. One evening, after dinner, I was washing my plate at the sink. My daughter-in-law stood beside me, drying hers with a towel. We worked silently. The children were playing in the living room, and the television murmured softly in the background. She said, "Ami, can we talk for a moment?" Her tone was calm, but I felt something shift inside me. I turned to her. "Yes, Beta?" She took a deep breath, choosing her words with care. "I know you've done so much for this family," she began. "You've taken care of us, the children, the home, and we are grateful." I nodded, unsure what was coming, but already feeling the heaviness of it. "But," she continued, "I think it's time you start focusing on yourself again. You spend all day here with us. Maybe you would feel happier doing things for yourself, your friends, your interests, something that is yours." I swallowed slowly. "Are you saying I should not stay here during the day?" No, she said quickly. "Not like that. I just think maybe it's time for you to think about your own life. We are managing everything now. We have our routines. We don't want you to feel like you must do everything for us." I looked at her carefully. She was not being cruel. She was being honest, maybe even brave. It takes courage to tell someone something that might hurt them.